Hi, welcome to Astrobabble. I'm Donna from Donna B Astrology,
And I'm Linda from Scullywag Astrology.
and today we are going to be doing secondary progressions. And it is an ancient technique that lets us take a peek into the life of someone for each day that they were alive for the first 90 days is kind of the time frame that we look at.
Mhm. Yeah, it's also known as a day for a year technique. So if we want to look at somebody's life symbolically when they were 10 years old, we look at where the planets are 10 days after birth, and we can compare that to the natal chart or by itself. If we want to know what's happening when they're 50, we look at the chart 50 days, the transits, 50 days after their birth. And again, we can look at it compared to the natal chart or by itself. Donna's made a presentation for us all about Elizabeth Taylor. And yeah, so she's going to walk us through it.
Okay. Our sources are Wikipedia, and the photo sources are all from the Commons Wikipedia page. This is her natal chart.
Born February 27, 1932. She has a 13 degrees Sagittarius ascendant. Her MC is at 14 degrees of Libra in the 11th house. So, interesting. And it will show up a lot in the charts that Donna talks about. She has Uranus and Venus, both at 17 degrees of Aries. And that's also her lot of Eros, which, as you probably imagine, is all about love and affection and that. And yeah, it shows up a lot in these secondary progressions. I'm sure it showed up a lot in her transits too.
It's kind of like the character that we call Cupid, the lot of arrows. So, um, yeah. So second progressions are equal to the movement of the planets for each day after birth. This is why I typically, tell anybody who has had a kid recently to write down every day how they're interpreting the energies, because they're going to face those same energies later on in their life. Okay. The transiting planets for each year will have the energy of the planets' movements of each day after birth. So a 25-year-old is going to experience the same energy as day 25 of their life. And like I said, the inner circle will stay the same throughout the demo. And as you can see, the ascendants are the same. This is the same chart on the inside as on the outside for right now. And it will move one day. The outside wheel will turn one day for each year that she's alive. The outer planets don't move much, but watch the second progressed moon. The moon will change signs every 2.5 years. It changes for us every 2.5 days. That's why it's one of the more quicker planets to watch. For here on this one, the second progressed Mercury moves onto the natal north node. This is when in 1942, when they released There's One Born Every Minute. This was the first movie that she had gone into. The moon has moved into a new moon phase, and the part of fortune has moved on to the first house. The part of fortune is just another lot that is one of the 7 hermetic lots that they used for this ancient technique. A second progressed Venus has moved into the 6th house, and the 6th house is equal to illness, service, and small pets. She started filming National Velvet while on a horse. She had a fall and broke her back during filming that would later impact her health. And the picture in the corner is a picture about that age that she was. She also was co-starring in Lassie Come Home. Her first crush was on John Derek at age 17. Her second progressed moon is in her 7th house of significant others. The natal out of Eros is on natal Uranus and Venus, and that it's a picture of her mom and dad. And at just 18 years old, so this would have been the 18th day kind of energy. But at 18 years old, she married Conrad Hilton. The second progressed moon is in the 8th house of other people's money, aka the spouse's money. The second progressed Venus sextile natal Mercury in the sun, and the second progressed Mars is trining the natal moon and widely squares the natal descendant.
Yeah, and the fact that that Venus, which we think about love, relationships, affections, is sextile, which is a helpful aspect. Natal Sun Mercury is important because Mercury rules that seventh house of our one-on-one relationships. And I mean, anything making contact with the sun is going to be significant too.
I think that Mercury has a lot to do with that seventh house as well.
Well, yeah,
It actually shows up because, yeah, you'll see later on.
yeah. Well, it rules the seventh, yeah. So, and yeah, it's in the sign of Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. So a little bit of excess there when it comes to relationships, perhaps. What was it, 8 marriages?
She divorced Conrad Hilton after only 8 months. The second progressed moon is now squaring the natal IC, which is the bottom of the chart. It's the end of the matter. Widely squaring the lot of Eros, which is on the natal Uranus and Venus. And the second progressed sun is conjunct the natal north node.
Yeah. Squares are challenging. So the fact that the moon's moved up, it's squared first, it's going to square the IC, which is, like Donna said, the bottom of the chart. So it can be very private part of our chart, very private. Yeah, just kind of almost a secretive place in some ways. It's, your home, what goes on behind closed doors, we don't know. But apparently, I believe that the marriage was quite tempestuous. I believe it was, yeah, not good. And yeah, and that will come up and square that Uranus, Venus, lot of Eros as well.
And when she was 19 years old, so this is actually reflective of the ninth day of her life.
19.
So Elizabeth proposed to Michael Wilding on February 21st, 1952. The second progressed Mercury is opposing the natal MC, which is the midheaven, conjunct the natal IC. The
So
second
again,
progressed moon
mhm,
is trining natal north node, and second progressed sun in the fourth house of lineage.
yeah. Well, the fourth house is our home, family, living situation, as well as parents.
Exactly.
Yeah. Plus,
Because in the next slide, we will see. Oh,
sorry. And Mercury, again, ruler of the seventh. So anything, whatever Mercury's doing is likely to have something to do with relationships. Or the other Mercury house is 10th house career. And let's face it, she was an actress, but yeah, she's just as well known for her relationships. So that correspondence between relationships and fame or career or public reputation are very much linked.
prominent house that's usually the midheaven resides around that area. So it's how the world views you, the 10th house. And as I was alluding to earlier, it had something to do with the fourth house, as she had 2 children. So this is lineage. The sun moves into the fifth house of children and creativity. As we saw, or as we'll see, in 1953 and 1955, she gave birth to Michael and Christopher Wilding. Moving on, the moon went over the south node when she was divorcing Michael Wilding. The moon is located at the lot of Nemesis. It's actually at 8 degrees Libra. And then we have the ascendant opposing the 8th house of death for this phase of her, where the moon is.
I was reading that he might have been, because he was quite a bit older than her, 20 years older, I believe, and he may have been quite jealous of her career being on the rise and his not being so much on the rise. Second house is also our house of our income, our finances, our resources, and that. And yeah, when the ascendant changes signs, because it will take about 30 years to get through a sign, but that first one might have taken just over 17 years.
Right.
Yeah, it's yeah, she's starting to become more independent, perhaps, flex her muscles a little bit, particularly her financial muscles. Yeah, that may have caused some issues.
With the moon still in or close by the lot of Nemesis, because it's co-present with in that 11th house. The ascendant opposing the house of death. The second progressed Venus is opposing the natal moon. And that is significant because, as Linda was alluding to earlier, Venus has a lot to do with how we love and those Venusian qualities. On February 2nd, 1957, she married Michael Todd in Acapulco. She converted to Judaism and that is signified by the second progressed Sun sextiling the second progressed Saturn. When we use progressions, we're trying to keep those orbs very, very close. So 1 to 2 degrees off is really where it is more prominent. With this particular technique, having the normal orbs of 8 degrees is just really out of range because we're looking at something very, very focused. This is what happened on, for this is her 25th year. So anyways, moving on. Lisa Todd was born in childbirth. Elizabeth almost died from the labor, and her second progressed moon is opposing the 5th house of children, the natal Venus and the natal Venus and Uranus.
Oh, yeah.
The second progressed Mars is trining the natal Pluto, and the second progressed Mercury is squaring the natal Pluto. So the squares are always harder, but the trines seem to make things move quicker. So that's how that's set up.
Yeah.
On this chart, this is when Michael Todd's plane crashed. The ascendant is opposing the 8th house of death. The second progressed Venus is opposing the natal moon. The second progressed Mars is trining the natal Pluto. And the part of fortune in the 7th house of partners. And the part of fortune is the things that happen to you beyond your control. These are things that are referred to as divine will, the expression of divine will. So it's what happens to you without any influence on your part.
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah. That Mercury representing, relationships, and that square, that Pluto is hard. Pluto in the 8th house of death too. So
yeah. And after the plane crash on May 12th, 1959, she married Eddie Fisher. And this can be considered her undoing. It developed into a huge scandal between her and Debbie Reynolds. Her second progressed midheaven and the second progressed moon in her natal 12th house is in fall and conjunct the natal moon. So the 12th house is reflective of your own things of your own undoing. The second progressed moon on the natal part of fortune. Or I'm sorry, the second progressed sun on natal part of fortune. Sorry, didn't mean to. I misspoke. And then the second progressed part of fortune is right on Algol.
yeah.
And that is a bad star. It has to do with Medusa's head after it had been decapitated. So it does not have a lot of nice things associated with that star. And when planets and points hit that, sometimes it gets triggered like a guitar string. And with the same flavor or sound.
Yeah. And for those that might not know, Debbie Reynolds was married to Eddie Fisher and had a couple of children when Elizabeth Taylor and he got together, and that's why it was a huge scandal, because this is like 1959, of course. So as scandalous as it might be these days, back then it was huge. Yeah.
And I think you can see on this photo right here, she's got a dressing on her neck. And I'm thinking that is a photo from the next slide because she had pneumonia. Yep.
Mm.
Although she won the Golden Globe for Butterfield 8 in 1961 and won her first Oscar, she was rushed to the hospital for emergency tracheotomy and was in a coma in the spring. Yeah, she had pneumonia, I believe, from
Yeah.
the reports that I had read.
Mm. I think this was just before she won the Oscar, but
Okay.
this is all around about the same time. April 17th is the date of the Oscars that year.
For the Oscars, the second progressed moon is in the first house of personal changes,
Mm-hmm.
and it trines a very benefic planet, her second progressed Jupiter,
Yeah,
which is a nice aspect.
very nice aspect. It's also conjunct her ascendant, so it's all about her, for an actor or an actress, winning an Academy Award's huge.
And the second progressed Venus, Chiron, is sextile the natal Pluto.
Yeah.
And
Chiron, the
this is
winged of
her,
Chiron. Yeah.
yeah, this is the sixth house perfection year. So those topics are going to be important. Her health is going to be important. And it was.
Mm.
And the second progressed MC or midheaven is conjunct the natal moon. So she was very much in the spotlight with that, winning that first Oscar. And the second progressed moon in the first house of self, she began an affair with Richard Burton. It started in 1962-63. And then the second progressed MC is on the natal moon. So we're seeing those connections by degree or within 1 degree of it. At 32, her second progressed moon into the second house of finances. The second progressed Mars is conjunct the North Node in the fourth house. And Mercury will station retrograde next year. And this is why I said that Mercury is so important with her seventh house. It's going retrograde. And what does retrograde ask us to do? It asks us to repeat and readdress things. So here she is. She married Richard Burton. Her second progressed moon is widely squared the lot of Eros. So the lot of Eros is still very much in this picture. The second progressed moon is widely squaring the second progressed Mercury as well. And the second progressed moon is trining the second progressed Venus. And that's always a nice aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And she also filmed Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf opposite Richard Burton at this time. But that Mercury retrograde is just so descriptive of their relationships. But moving into the third house of community, Elizabeth Taylor establishes the Heart Disease Research Foundation in memory of her close friend who passed away from heart disease, Montgomery Clift. The Mercury is stationing retrograde. Richard Burton purchases a 33.19 carat Krupp diamond and the Cartier heart diamond, once owned by the the Emperor Shah Jahan, builder of the Taj Mahal. So that kind of is description of that ascendant moving into that second house. It's still there. The second progressed midheaven is on the natal moon, and the second progressed moon is sextiling the natal Venus. If you're watching this on a screen, Linda's helping you view these planets and the aspects with a pointer, so that's very helpful. The second progressed moon into the sixth house of illness and service is conjunct the second progressed IC. Both of those are on Algol, and that's that star that really is it leads to not good aspects or not good things coming. It can lead to that. The second progressed Jupiter is stationing direct. The second progressed Sun is conjunct the second progressed Uranus, the second progressed Mars on the natal part of Fortune is sextiling the second progressed Saturn. And in 1974, she won the Golden Globe and divorced Richard Burton. Elizabeth Taylor ends her movie career as she is denounced as immoral by Vatican newspapers and on U.S. House of Representatives. I don't know who else has to go through and endure that, but I can't imagine that that was a very nice time.
Yeah, that Mars in her chart represents her fifth house of what we do for fun, also things like romance, socializing, children, creativity, and that, but also the 12th house, which is known as our undoing. It's excess, it's addiction, it's escape, amongst other things. So, yeah, these Mars coming to the part of Fortune, it's like, was she doing anything different than anybody else, really? Apart from maybe marrying them a little bit more often. Yeah, but she gets denounced by the Vatican and on the US House of Representatives floor. What's Mercury?
Interesting times.
Yeah. Mercury, interesting, is coming back. It's retrograde, so it's at 21 degrees. It's coming back to square that Pluto again. And it's interesting that she ends her movie career at that time. Yeah, because relationships, her public reputation, 10th house ruled by Mercury, 7th house ruled by Mercury, are causing issues at this time. And yeah, that moon IC, the IC is the most private area of our chart on Algol, as Donna said. She's seen as a bit of a scarlet woman.
And then with the second progressed moon into the 7th house of your significant other, the second progressed Mars in the 5th house of romance is sextiling the second progressed Venus moon in the 7th house. And the second progressed retrograde Mercury Uranus and the Sun are all conjunct. So you have those three all together in that 5th house, as Linda was alluding to earlier, the house of fun, and it's getting that jumbled Uranus, doing things differently kind of energy. That is all kind of mashed together. How she talks, the Uranus, the Sun is just, it's all those energies are very much blending. And she ends up divorcing Richard Burton. What a night. And this is where I think that Mercury retrograde comes into play, is where she remarries Richard Burton in 1975 and just divorces a few months later. So she re-looked at, that marriage.
Yeah.
And was willing to
Mercury.
redo it. So I think that's very reflective of that.
Mercury ruling that 7th house, yeah. And Mercury being retrograde.
And the moon in the 7th house is your significant other, and she married. So that energy is still prominent. She married on December 4th, 1976, John Warner, the former Secretary to the Navy under Gerald Ford. The second progressed Mercury is conjunct the second progressed Uranus.
Yeah, this was a bit of a change. I believe all the other husbands before this, apart from the first one, Nikki Hilton, were actors. And suddenly she's marrying a political guy. So that's Mercury Uranus certainly fits with that.
Yep. And then the second progressed moon is conjunct Neptune. That's up there in the 10th house. This is very reflective of that. The second progressed ascendant moves into the 3rd house, and it's getting darn close to that Saturn. And she was going through a lot of pain from her previous injuries and falls and that type of thing. She ended up divorcing John Warner in 1982 at this time. But I think that's where she started getting more into things to relieve pain. Ended up having her go to the Betty Ford Clinic.
Yeah, well, Neptune up here with the moon, like you mentioned. First of all, I was thinking disillusionment with, the relationship. But yeah, Neptune also closely associated with substances, alcohol, pills, all sorts of things. So yeah, both seem quite applicable at this time.
So at age 52, she's her second progressed moon is applying by opposition to the second progressed Mars in the fifth house. And that is reflective on August 5th, 1984. Richard Burton dies. And I think, because the moon is how we feel and how we're interpreting the world around us. The moon is very connected to our feelings. And I think this is very descriptive of that.
Yeah. And Mars was ruling that fifth house, which includes romance and that fun things, but also our undoing. So, yeah. And it's quite possible that, she needed to retreat and, reflect on that, which is also a 12th house matter. And then we have secondary progressed Mercury retrograding right on that IC, the natal IC, the most private, hidden, secret part of your chart.
And then the second progressed sun moves into the sixth house of service. Here, the second progressed part of fortune is on the natal Jupiter in the house of philosophy. Those two combined in 1985, she helped establish the American Foundation for AIDS Research. Second progressed Mercury is applying to the second progressed Mars, ruler of the 12th house of charity. So that's where that's coming from. And here we have Mars is conjunct the Venus-Uranus, lot of Eros grouping that we have. And Mars is conjunct right there in the middle of all those. Also, the second progressed MC or the midheaven is conjunct the ascendant. So this is something that's changed for herself because the first house is the self. The second progressed Venus is in the seventh house, sextiling that second progressed Uranus. And here she married Larry Fortensky, someone who she met at the Betty Ford Clinic.
Interesting that when Burton died, I think this Mercury was retrograde, but here it's direct again. We go back a minute. When Burton died, it was retrograde. That was 85. By 91, it was direct again. Must have stationed about that degree.
Okay, and here we have the part of fortune is conjunct the lot of Eros, Venus, and Uranus. So all those are all mixed together. And this is when she divorced Larry Fortensky.
Ascendant's just about to change too within the next year or so as well. Go from third house to fourth house. And when the ascendant or the sun or any sign changes houses or signs, that's usually a big shift.
And at 65, so she is in a sixth house perfected year, which is another technique that Linda and I have done an episode on is perfection. I think we used Elvis, right?
Yes, yeah.
So if you want to learn more about that, that is an interesting technique as well. The second progressed ascendant is on the natal Mars at the fourth house cusp, and she had a brain tumor.
Yeah.
And had an operation removing part of her brain, and that it was a benign tumor. So, but it very well might have been affecting her moods. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but
just looking at Venus here. Interesting that Venus which rules the sixth house, is square her natal nodes at that time.
So this would have been the 65th day of her life. That Venus would have squared her node. So you got to wonder if, she had an illness or, something. Anyway, moving on. Age 67, the moon enters the sixth house of illnesses. Second progressed ascendant is on the natal sun, and the sun is one of her high legs. The high legs are a planet or a celestial body that is reflective of your vitality. So you want to keep your sun and the moon in good shape. In 1999, she had a fall that resulted in a fracture of her spine. So that moon entering in the sixth house of illness is very telling of, a spine fracture. That's quite significant of an illness and very debilitating, I would think. And she is in a new moon phase we have in the 6th house, the moon is in a new moon phase. The second progressed ascendant is on the natal sun. So the ascendant is getting the energy of the natal sun. The second progressed MC or midheaven is trying the second progressed Uranus, which could be something that is, shocking. Uranus is that planet of shock. And here she was made Dame Commander of Order of the British Empire at Buckingham Palace. So she was recognized. It's the new moon phase.
Oh, very close
So,
to the
which
new
is
moon
kind of
phase.
cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yes, even though you're older, you can still have nice things happen to you. Second progressed moon and Venus are conjunct in the 8th house of other people's money, trining the natal Mars. And at this part of her life, she had a lawsuit filed against her for buying a Van Gogh in 1963 at an auction. That lawsuit, how do you know if you're buying it at an auction that it was, acquired in not nice ways? And it had nothing to do with her. That's why I think it was it's conjunct Saturn there. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
good point.
yeah. I was looking because I was like, oh, it had nothing to do with her. So, so yeah, there it is. Diagnosed with congestive heart failure and scoliosis. Regarding medical astrology, Venus ruler of the 6th is in the 8th house is not a good sign. You don't want the 6th and the 8th house rulers connected. Yeah, she was diagnosed with congestive heart failure and scoliosis. So,
And having the ruler of your 6th in the 8th doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to die. I mean, if you've got Venus very late in the 7th house, it's going to go through there, but there may be anxiety, or there may be worry, or there may be just lots of issues to do with shared finances and that. But in this case, the ruler of the 6th in the 8th, she was 72. She had been battling ill health for a long time, and it was with the moon, which is often related to our physical body. So
yeah, I mean, and if you have the moon as your 8th house ruler, if every time the moon went into the 8th house, you're going to die. That's crazy. You would have to know death at like 3 different ways. So that's just one of them, and just having one particular aspect happening at one particular time is not indicative of death in any sense of the word. I don't want to scare anybody who has 8th house ruler the moon, because you're going to get that once a month throughout your life. So
but
that
in
is
this
not everybody who's a Sagittarius rising is not going to die once a month. There, it's just that it's just happens to be there. And then when other things like Venus is in there now, but you would have to see other things and using other techniques if you were going to say, oh, this is when she's going to die. So don't worry about that if that is your case.
I mean,
I don't want to scare anybody.
in 72 years, that Venus, which rules the 6th house of ill health, has traveled from 17 Aries all the way up to 2 Cancer. It didn't happen as soon as it went into the 8th house. She was 72. It took 72 years to get up there. And the moon happens to be the ruler of the 8th house. The moon could have been over here. It could have been anywhere at the time if she'd been born slightly later.
Right. And though the moon and Venus met up in her 8th house when she was 72 days old. She didn't die. It has to have other things associated with it as well. So I'm sure the moon and Venus have, if she's 72 years old and Venus goes into or changes or goes around the chart every year and a half, she's done this at least 30 times. So she didn't die all 30 times.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, this is secondary progressions and they move much slower.
Right. Yes, and this is when she was diagnosed with the heart failure, the congestive heart failure and scoliosis. It's not indicative that she's going to die. It just says that this was a chronic health issue.
Yeah. She also
has
the sun, which is often associated with heart, on her natal Chiron in the 6th house of illness. It's another indication of medical issues there.
Yeah, Chiron is the ruler or the asteroid. It's not even a planet, it's an asteroid. And it's called the wounded healer because that's usually where your wounds are in way modern astrology.
Yeah. But I mean, it's interesting that she actually founded, I think you said not the Australian, the American Cancer, no, not Cancer, American Heart Foundation for her friend Montgomery Clift. So there's the healer part, using her fame and money towards that. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly descriptive of the wounded healer. And Elizabeth Roseman Taylor passed away at Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles of congestive heart failure. The sun, one of her heligs, is at the portal of death. That's in medical astrology. And the moon is on the south node, and Neptune is stationing direct, and Saturn just stationed retrograde. So all those planets were like
Yeah. A lot of
changing direction
activity.
and all that kind of thing.
Sun's on the very close to Algol too, that star associated with destruction or losing your head.
Yeah.
Wow, very interesting.
And thank you for listening. And thank you, Elizabeth Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna. That was very interesting. Very nice to hear about all that.
Progressions is a very interesting technique. I think that everybody who has a child ought to write down how their kid is interpreting those energies. I think that at the time that you're born, you're set with how you respond to the energies that are out there at the time of your birth. So, and I got that from Bernadette Brady, and it just really is very reflective, especially with this technique, because it's the first 79 days, for her, if somebody would have written, that down of like, she had a cold or she overcome this or, she got, whatever kind of recognition, whatever it was, it's very reflective. And I really love the technique.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And you can compare, like against your own natal chart, but even looking just at the sometimes when Donna was telling us about things, we were comparing secondary progressed planets against each other, and sometimes they were against the natal chart. So you can look at both of them. It's quite interesting.
So hopefully we'll come up with another technique. Thank you very much for watching. Share and like and comment, please. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.